Dear audience, dear guests, dear colleagues, I would like to welcome you to our career talks. This is part of our program at the Day of the University, der Tag der Universität. Today we're celebrating our 657th birthday. It's the day of our founding as a member of the Alma Mater Rudolfina. And today we can say we are very proud to be a very great and large and institution for training, for research, and probably throughout these 657 years, recruiting, getting talent, attracting talent, fostering talents, keeping talents probably was always one of the main tasks and a challenge. Just for one example, Maria Theresia, she was recruiting internationally. She brought here Gerald van Swieten and he was laying one of the cornerstones for the first medical Vienna school. Today, we did also remember one of the darkest phases of our university. 1938, when Nazis took over, and more than half of our faculty, instructors, renowned
which gives me a new opportunity to expand my molecular biology approaches and directions towards translational research. And the reason being that in addition to heading a group at Peretz, as I have for the past 9 years, where we focus on trying to understand the molecular mechanisms behind DNA damage response and the regulation of gene expression, now by becoming part of the medical university and being in charge of a translational radiobiology group at MedAustron, which is one of the very few ion beam centers in the world, where we have access to particle accelerator, carbon ions, proton ions, which are used at the center for treating patients, but now we also have access to radiation for our research pursuits. So we can treat cancer cells and we can see what kind of responses we can induce and how we can use combinational approaches to synergistically eradicate cancer cells. So now this is a very new opportunity for me, and I'm very happy that I can expand my mechanistic endeavors towards a more clinically applied research.
That sounds very interesting, and it's in the heart of our strategy to translate knowledge and bring it to the patients, closer to the patient, and so we are all looking forward. But maybe looking back at your history, was there like this one moment in your research career or this one experiment or result which was really inspiring, or could you consider a highlight? Could you maybe elaborate on like this one special moment?
There were many, but maybe I share just the latest one. And it's actually tightly linked with my new field of study, which is applied research. So we were looking into a transcription regulator called PHF3, doesn't matter, a new factor that regulates gene expression and has the specificity for regulating neuronal gene expression. And of course, we performed very detailed studies to understand how this protein works, how it functions. But now, actually, another direction opened up by realizing that this protein, this gene, is mutated in patients that suffer from neurodevelopmental disorders such as microcephaly. And it's only last year that we got in touch with clinicians who have now 10 patients with these mutations. And we have the opportunity, as the only group who have been studying this protein so far, to understand at the molecular level why these mutations lead to this. My mechanistic research with applied research. And as I said, this is just the latest one. There were many turning points, I would say, in my career, many exciting discoveries, exciting new directions, but this is the latest one, and I'm very happy for the opportunity to expand in that direction. And with this position, we actually have all the research infrastructure to explore this further.
Cool, that sounds very exciting. And but maybe we introduce now Claudia Kuntner, our second guest here on stage, and also one of the recent recruitment to our faculty. I think Claudia has a very different background and a different research focus, but maybe we're also going to find some similarities, and I think the infrastructure Dea just mentioned might be one of those points. But let me introduce to you now Claudia. So Claudia studied technical physics in Vienna, the Technical University of Vienna, and she did a PhD in CERN in Geneva, where she continued also to be a postdoc. She worked as a group leader at the microPET imaging group at the Austrian Research Center, and also as a senior scientist at the Austrian Institute of Technology, and was a visiting scientist at the UCLA in Los Angeles. So she was appointed as an assistant professor for medical imaging in spring 21, and so joined, and also the medical university, actually a little bit before then, but now the faculty. And also her list of achievements is very, very long in teaching, in science, in research, and I'm going to skip that. But also, as with Dea, Claudia, maybe you want to say, so what is your research about? What does it mean? What's your imaging focus, and what does it mean? Please.
So my research is a little bit different than Dea's, because I was all through my career not so much really in basic research, but more in the applied research. And what we are doing, we are using imaging methods, like typical methods, X-ray based methods like CT or MR, that's what most of the people might know, in combination with nuclear medical methods like PET and SPECT, to try to figure out how diseases are developing. And we are doing this in preclinical models. And what I find so fascinating about imaging, it's a technology, but the cool thing is you can apply it to nearly all of the diseases. And it's what I really love about it, because I'm from training a physicist, but I learned so much about medicine and biology throughout my whole career, and this is just fascinating, and I think it will never end, also this fascination. And so that means we are quite versatile. So depending on kind of which project you're working on, also of course which kind of projects you get funded, you know, this is always changing. As a scientist, it's quite difficult. Sometimes you always to get funding. We are working on mostly oncological projects, which means that we're trying to figure out new kind of treatments for different kind of diseases that are maybe challenging to treat. Like at the moment, we are working on cholangiocarcinoma, which is a quite challenging disease, and we're trying to figure out if we can find an optimal treatment and follow this kind of treatment effects by using the imaging technologies. But we've also worked in neuroscience applications. For example, we tried to find new models for Alzheimer's disease, and also then trying to visualize these models and also see if there are maybe some treatments that you can already apply, and then of course later on also apply to the patients. And the good thing about imaging is that we are having it in the clinical and the preclinical area, so the translation is quite straightforward. So that's in a nutshell what I'm kind of doing.
Suppose you have this translational aspiration, and it's an important role. And I mentioned the infrastructure in my introduction, but Dea, you also mentioned this very unique infrastructure. So is this, you know, for recruiting also, and for the medical university, and for you as a researcher, this access to high-end infrastructure, what role does it play?
Definitely. We just wish that it was closer to Vienna a bit, because it's in Wiener Neustadt, so it's not far away. But so far, that was the only obstacle, because having access to this amazing particle accelerator is such an asset, I think, because it's, as I said, just one of 3, I think, in Europe, one of very few in the world. So it's an amazing opportunity for us to use it for our research purposes. And so we hope that we will be able to attract people, that distance, travel time will not be such an impediment, and that people will realize what kind of opportunities they have and how unique this ion beam center is.
And Claudia, for you, you're happy with the infrastructure available? Yes, or
it's kind of the same. As I'm working with imaging, of course, you need the imaging modalities. It means you need the scanners. And as preclinical imaging has kind of other constraints in terms of the clinical part, which means we need MR scanners with higher field strength, or we need PET scanners with better resolution, you need to have dedicated scanners. You cannot do your imaging with the clinical ones. And that's why it's really important always to be kind of on the up to date and to have like all the modalities available. Also in terms of flexibility, of course nowadays with Eurobioimaging and also global bioimaging, it would be possible to do your research also in another institution in Europe. But of course this involves a lot of planning, and also you're only there for a limited amount of time. And that means it's restricted to a certain period and also to a certain kind of project. But by having the infrastructure in-house, it's more open to everyone who might be interested in using it. And I think there are still a lot of groups who might not have known about the preclinical imaging lab, and maybe they are hearing about it today and are interested also to do some research there in the near future.
So the promotion banner, pill. So now, maybe moving away from infrastructure, which is one part. Claudia, you mentioned also third-party funding, but then it's like the career options as an institution you can offer. And Medical University introduced like these 3 career tracks. Actually, we were a little bit late, and it was due to the change in university law. But basically what we are offering now is this interne Karrierevereinbarung. So it's an internal career model which ends in a permanent position. And we have this fast-track professorship, and we have this tenure-track professorship. And we're a little bit late to introduce it in a way how it's probably international usage. But so you were one of the pioneers of this model. So maybe you can both reflect a little bit. How was the process? How did you experience? Are there any recommendations how we should do it different? And finally, but most importantly, what does it mean for you and your career steps? Whoever wants to start.
For me, it was a unique opportunity. I always wanted to stay in academia, and I was already looking if there are any kind of calls open from the last 10 years. And when I finally found out that there was this open call for this position, it was clear that I have to apply. So I applied in 2020. And it then kind of was quite a long period of silence. So maybe that's one of the recommendations, not to be so long, this period of silence, but maybe, you know, to have some feedback in between until I was invited to the hearing. And the kind of sad thing for me was that the hearing was in the COVID time, and that means it was by WebEx, which of course is challenging because you know that the direct communication is always better than when you're doing the things over WebEx. And the second thing, what I found a little bit sad, is normally you see the other people that are applying for that professorship. So you're normally in the audience and you listen to the other presentations, and that was also missing. And I really would have loved to see who else was applying for the same position than I did. And yeah, then again, there was a tiny period of silence until I was informed that I got the position. And here's the second tiny recommendation. So it would be nice to hear that maybe from the committee head and not from somebody from the personal, how to say that, PR.
Okay.
So that's just, but apart from that, it was great because without having this opportunity, I would not have stayed in science. As it was already clear in my former position that I had, that there was a discontinuity there, and I might be doing something completely different now. Maybe I would be a teacher. That was also an option. But it's of course nicer to stay in silence and to continue what I love doing.
So communication, I took that point. Faster communication, well taken. Dea, what's your experience?
It was actually I had very good experience. Maybe the reason being that there was some time pressure to recruit a person for this position, but I think it's always good, especially when there are many candidates, when you have time matters, so that it's very critical to recruit the person before someone else. So I think it's good to be fast. In my case, I think it started in October and everything was finalized in June, which is, I think, a very standard period of time that takes usually between the applications are submitted and the final deal is made. So, because I interviewed before at different places in different countries, and it pretty much followed the same experience I had.
7 months is actually fast for the Medical University of Vienna, but so I take this second point, so speed matters.
Speed matters, yes, definitely. For me, what was critical, what really made me decide to take the offer was how much support I felt at different levels. So directly from my new department head, Professor Joachim Wieder, from Professor Dietmar Georg, from all the team at MedAustron, because this was a new team for me, that I had a team at Perutz, but now I have another team. And for me, this was really important, that I felt a lot of support from everyone. And this intrinsic feeling that you are wanted for that position, that people actually care to have you on board, and that they will do whatever they can, whatever is in their power to support you. So for me, this was very important, that you are acknowledged for your previous contributions and that there is a promise for future support. Because I think for us, being in academia, support matters a lot. It's very hard. And without being supported, we could lose motivation because, you know, in light of everything else that we have to struggle with, so getting funding, publishing, staying very productive, then not having enough support probably takes away or makes everything much harder. And having a lot of support makes a huge difference. And so I think recommendation from my side would be just to keep supporting people and make them feel welcome, and that your doors are open when there are some issues to be discussed, and that helps a lot. It helped a lot in my case and made me decide to join you.
Okay, and very happy both of you joined us.
I think it's really important that we're having this kind of tenure-track positions, because otherwise you're just losing people. And it's already as a scientist, as you said, it's quite challenging because you are working on so many different levels. You're doing like this pro bono work with doing reviews, you're doing like the grant writing, publications, data acquiring, the supervision of students, lecturing and so on. And if you only have always a permanent, not a permanent, but a time-limited contract, you're kind of getting older, and at a certain time point it would be nice like to maybe stay in a certain position where you already know everyone, where you have your own team and so on. So I really think it's extremely important to be able really to keep the good people, because otherwise you're just going to lose them somewhere else. They're just going away to another European country, to the US or wherever, and trying to continue their career there, which of course is extremely sad.
I cannot agree with you more. I really can't. And not just keeping people at the level of a group leader position, so preventing them from leaving or maybe actually accepting them back. That's also very important. But within a team, for us to have stability, for us to be productive, I think it's important to have some permanent positions. So this, I think, especially at the point of tenure, is a very important element to allow us to keep the expertise in the lab, because with every PhD student leaving the lab, then part of that expertise also goes away. And having, for example, 1 or 2 people on whom we can rely to maintain this expertise through offering them permanent positions, I think that's very, very important. And missing, I think, right now at universities, in many countries, some countries actually have dealt with that very well. So there are staff scientist positions that are funded governmentally through universities. But here I think it's still very hard to get hold of such positions. And I think for promoting us, from promoting group leaders, and for allowing them to keep on being productive. I think these staff scientist positions are very, very important.
I think Medical University did do a great job in offering this internal career model, but one also has to be aware, I mean, you need a good balance of fluctuation as well, no? I mean, it's, there is not abundance of permanent positions, so, and finding that good balance is not only for the university, but probably also for you as a group leader. one of the tasks and the challenges. So, but I fully agree, this is it's a challenge. No, yeah.
It's good to get new ideas, new people, but it's also good to keep the expertise to prevent it from drifting away with people leaving. So I completely agree. We need to have a balance of both, but also not to be in a situation where we're just left without this expertise being maintained in the group.
But talking about this mobility, so we think that it's really important that you bring this expertise and have some expertise also from preferably foreign institutions. And so both of you have been in CERN, you have been on many places. So we actually do have this as a prerequisite for a tenure-track position. Do you think it's a good idea? And from your own experience, I mean, what was the value of this staying abroad and bringing back or coming with this multitude of other experiences? Whoever wants to start.
I mean, I had the chance to already go away when I was still kind of a student, when I was a doctoral student, and I still think it was the perfect time, because you don't have a family normally at that time, and you maybe don't even have a partner, so it's quite easy to go away and to kind of really enjoy also the time being there. At CERN, it was a kind of special situation because there are a lot of limited years contracts, like all the doctoral students and also the postdocs. They're only there for a certain amount of time, and they also did not really have a lot of staff positions. And that's why when everybody was there, and there was really a lot of people working mostly in physics, but also engineering and informatics and so on, it felt like everybody was very, how do you say that, engaged and also very initiative. And so sometimes we said it feels like a big summer camp because, I mean, you were working in science, but still you had the evenings or the weekends where you could like spend time together. And I will never miss that. It was really such a great experience to get to know all these great people and also to keep still contact a little bit with them, even if they drifted away to different areas. Not all of them stayed in physics. Some are doing something completely different now. But I will never kind of miss this time. And for me, I think it was really the best timing to already do that quite early, because then you don't have to choose. And I think that's one of the challenges when you're later in your career, you might have to choose what you want. And this is, of course, not great, because this decision can never be one which is ideal for one personally. To choose if you go abroad or if you want to stay like with your family. So this is, but of course, everybody has this decision. So this is not women related. The men are facing the same issues.
I completely agree that mobility is a very important element, but I would not say that it's necessary to go abroad, to go to another country, because I think it would be sufficient to just go to another lab, because you will experience completely different environment, completely different approach to science. Many labs are international, so you will get in touch with other cultures, especially in Vienna. It's so international, at the Vienna Biocenter, for example. So I think going abroad is not a prerequisite, but being mobile, meaning going from your PhD to another lab for your postdoc and maybe even a third lab, I think that's important, just to be exposed to different ways of approaching biological questions.
So, I mean, comparing Paris, Manchester, now Vienna, so it's not the cultural, so it's not the location, but it's more like the cultural difference between the labs and institution. That's what matters?
Yes, in my mind, yes, definitely, because we are all very different. So just by being in Vienna doesn't mean that we do science in the same way. So we all have different ways we approach scientific questions, and I think it's important to be exposed to different scientific mentalities. But that does not necessarily mean that you need to go abroad, because I'm thinking, for example, I'm just considering my collaborations. I don't need to have international collaborations because there is so much expertise in Vienna, so many different fields, so many different model organisms. And so whatever we want to do that we cannot do ourselves, we can actually collaborate with someone in Vienna or close to Vienna. So that's why I think it's not a prerequisite to go abroad, to go international, because we are already so international here we are attracting many international, so many people from abroad, and it's important to just change our way of thinking by talking to different people, by being exposed to their way of thinking. So that type of mobility is definitely important, in my opinion.
I mean, I think it's also quite difficult sometimes for the students themselves, because when you're a group leader and you have a good student, you just want to keep them. And I think it's really hard sometimes really just to let them go. Even if it's good for them, you know, but sometimes, you know, you're trying then to offer maybe even more interesting positions or topics or anything that they are going to stay. But maybe then also as a group leader, you have to rethink, and maybe you just have to let them go. I don't know, the group in Vienna or internationally, so that also they can kind of explore new ways of living, of science, of interaction.
That's an individual choice, I think. Some people maybe would prefer to stay where they are. Maybe they're happy where they are. That's why I'm saying a staff scientist position is a really good choice. And we all have different ambitions in our careers. Not all of us want to become group leaders. Yes. Some of us just want to stay in science. We want to stay at the bench. We want to do our research for the rest of our lives. But we also need stability. So that's why having staff scientist positions offers stability and keeps people happy, just because not everyone has the ambition to become a group leader.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this letting PhD students go, we're going to talk about this. I would also like to talk about leadership. But you mentioned the timing of going abroad, and that and mentioned, you know, having kids and family and this choice. And so we had Women's Day only on Tuesday, so a few days ago. And you're 12 female role models here. And so maybe from this female perspective, although you already said it's not only a female perspective if we talk about diversity and gender and so on. But being a role model, what's the challenges that you were facing as women in academia? Any special things, or is it's all good? I mean, we are facing a little bit of a leaky pipeline at the medical university as well. You know, you probably know we have more than 50% of medical students, but then it's in third-party funding. In science, it's still a little bit it's almost the same. But then we have this with professors and leading profession, unfortunately, still a gap. And having kids even widens this gap. So what's your personal experience?
I have had some not so good experience. I can give you one example which just sticks in my mind. It was my first grant application where one of the reviewers said that my maternity leave cannot justify my lack of productivity. And I was very shocked, considering how much everyone has been talking for many years about supporting female scientists, and then having such a comment from a reviewer, which hopefully did not influence the decision, but still there is this mindset whereby people think that we can do everything equally well at the same time, and it's not possible. So there are times where being a mother has to become a priority, which means we need to take some time off to focus on our child. Otherwise, I think there's no point in having children if you cannot give them all the love and all the attention that they deserve, especially in these early years. So I think we have to take that into account, and we have to be very proactive in supporting female scientists, that they don't think that they have to come back to work within a week or a few months, so that there is this support coming from our side and flexibility, and that they feel that they will be welcome back, and that their expertise and their contributions are valuable and valued, and also their contributions to raising children. So this support is very important, and I hope that people making decisions about positions and about careers will take that into account and be very serious about supporting people, not just on paper, but in real life.
Yes. And Claudia, your experience?
I was quite lucky, I have to say. I was always supported both by male and female scientists. And also, of course, by the rest of the group, because without them, it would not have been possible that the group still exists when I was on maternity leave. So if they did not jump in and take over the projects and took over the coordinations and everything, it would have been really tough. And that's why I think I'm really lucky to kind of work in this great environment with all these people, because, yeah, it just would not have worked out. The good thing is, I mean, I'm really still shocked about that comment that you received from that reviewer. But yeah, I think this would be an own topic by itself, the reviewing system in science, both papers and grants, maybe an extra discussion round.
And I also don't think that having children compromises productivity, because I have experienced many female scientists whose productivity was not compromised as a result, because they compensate through incredibly good organizational skills. So I think you can reach a balance, a good balance between being productive and also being a good parent through good organizational skills. So I think one does not have to compromise the other. And I think there is still this mindset that once you become a parent, you're no longer as productive, as dedicated as a scientist. But I think we can do that. We just need support. I think support is just critical, and that we don't doubt people and that we just support them.
Actually, we're very often facing that we just don't get enough female, Bewerbungen, applications. And sometimes I think that they must be out, these female scientists, and they just don't apply because they maybe are not courageous enough, and maybe they, they don't want to face that more senior or more responsible position. So how could we help them to be more courageous? What do they need? Networks, support? What is it?
I think it's all of it, that already starting quite early, really to tell them that they can achieve everything, they just have to try. And I think that's one of the issues, that people are, especially women scientists, they just don't try. Because when I'm talking sometimes to some of the younger students also at conferences, or if they don't want to follow this idea or so on, a lot of them just say that, oh no, I'm not so far in my career already, and no, this is too tough, and they will say no. But I think if you don't try, you will not know it, And as you said, I think it needs courage to do that, and support. I think mentoring is great. So if you also, these young scientists would have a great mentor behind who's always a little bit pushing or encouraging them to try it, then I think it would be better, I hope. Also for networking or having new projects, new ideas, you need a partner from a certain university. You don't know them, but you can always try and write them an email. I mean, the only thing that they can say is no. So I think there is not really a lot that you can lose, but there is definitely a lot that you can gain by trying. I mean, this is at least what I was always doing. Just ask. And a lot of time people just say yes, even if you expect a no. And that's what we need to train our younger students and younger researchers to be more courageous and just to try it out.
Did you have mentors?
Yes, of course. So I would say I had my child after my postdoc, so I decided to take a break between my postdoc and becoming a group leader, and that was important to me because I just wanted to be free from having to worry about all the experiments and everything else, so trying to balance the two things. But I think having had examples in my own group where it's possible, or also groups at the Institute, I think it's really possible to combine both, to run both your family life and your lab life at the same time. And I think mentoring, as you said, is critical here, that you have someone behind you who supports you and who encourages you that you can do both. And that even if there are times where productivity drops, which happens, that it's not the end of the world, that they will come back and they will be welcomed back and that they will be back on track. So mentoring, I think, is critical, and that goes together with support, and support at different levels, and starting, of course, within a group if we're talking about someone like a colleague in the group, or at higher levels, if it's about group leaders, then also their supervisors to support their family life. I think females are discouraged maybe because they think they can't do both efficiently and equally well, that they cannot stay in the science game and have a family life at the same time. I agree that it's challenging, and of course there are certain sacrifices that one has to make, but these sacrifices should come on both ends. So, as I said before, sometimes family life takes priority, sometimes science life. It shouldn't be one always at the expense of the other. There should be a balance, and if we manage to convey to young scientists that it's possible to achieve that balance and that we are there to support them, I think they will become more courageous to stay in science.
Definitely, and that's our role and our task to do so. And I mean, you had mentors, but probably, you know, in your role, you're a mentor yourself. And so I'm curious about what do you think about leadership? May just give you a little bit of a background. The Medical University of Vienna, we started a project called Leadership and Reputation. And we have this hypothesis that, you know, your individual reputation, the institutional reputation, and leadership. So starting from a group leader up to university management level, all these three topics are highly interconnected. And so we have run a lot of focus groups, and we're going to have a task force working on this leadership and reputation topic. So, but your theory or your approach to leadership as a group leader, do you have some thoughts about that? And maybe, Claudia, you start, because you said, like, letting the PhDs go. I think this is part of leadership, like promoting them, mentoring them. So what are your thoughts about leadership?
It's, yeah, I think it's kind of a guidance. For me, it's when having students, I always try like to guide them and to push them in the kind of right direction. But you cannot really say everything that point by point what they have to do. I think you also have to let them in the science pit wander around a little bit and exploring different areas, and maybe then you push them back kind of in the right direction. So for me, leadership is more a supporting thing, and not to kind of say that they have to do things in this and that way exactly. But it's more support, because anyhow we're talking about a scientific career. So these people are going, if they want to pursue this career, they're going to be scientists at the end. And scientists normally means that you need to have a self-independent way of thinking and of trying to find solutions for scientific problems. So you have to start quite early already to be independent in your thinking and the way also what you're doing. And that's why, for me, it's leadership more like really kind of pushing them always in the right direction so that they can move forward towards the goal. And that goal normally is like finishing of the master thesis or finishing of the PhD thesis. I just wanted to say one more sentence to the family and work-life balance. For me, without my family and my husband and grandparents and so on, it would not be possible to kind of have this balance between the family life and the scientific life. So this is just one thing. I'm very happy that I'm having them, because without them it would be really very tough. Yeah, but that's kind of what I think about leadership. And in terms of reputation, I mean, when we think about which kind of universities we think they are great, we are thinking of certain names. And I think they have these names by reputation, because they're doing great science. So they're having cool publications, good infrastructures, good professors. So I think it's all of these together. It's not only one single point. But certainly reputation is something extremely important, because when you think about where you want to go to a lab, you normally have a certain name in mind of a scientist which you want to work with. And that comes by reputation.
Yeah, so I also think this individual reputation and institutional reputation are highly interconnected. So Dea, your thoughts about leadership, your own and
yes.
experience leadership. And maybe, I mean, you have experienced also different institutions, and so...
I have to admit, I know that many people are guided by reputation of the institute or of the group leader, but I have to say I never was. For me, the deciding point was always the project. Did I like the project? Was this exciting for me? Did it spark my curiosity? Did it give me enough room for exploration? That was always for me the main reason for either choosing to work in a group or choosing a project where I work or choosing the environment. And now talking about the environment also, I think it's very important to be surrounded by many different types of scientists, by many different topics. This really broadens your horizons, and many times, especially since coming to Vienna, it made me change the way I'm thinking. It opened up new research directions. Also now with MedAustron, completely new research direction opened up for me. And it wouldn't have happened were it not for the environment. And now it's really not the reputation for me that's the critical element for shaping my career. It's really the research questions and the environment. I think, and I would recommend for others also maybe to be guided more by that, because sometimes, there isn't that much behind reputation of an institute, or maybe it deteriorates with time. But the quality of the minds and the questions these minds come up with, that's what matters. And I think that should be the guiding thought when choosing who to work with. And also, my recommendation will always be try to choose people who you think would be good mentors for you. And I think one person cannot be a good mentor for everyone. There needs to be this personal compatibility, also compatibility in terms of scientific values, in terms of what makes us passionate, what makes us curious. Can we find that type of match with our mentor? Do we have similar things that make us passionate about and similar questions we want to address? And if we choose the right person to work with, then I think that's the best thing that can happen. Then everything else is easy, I would say.
So we're back to the talents and recruiting the talents and mixing talents that that foster each other. So are there anything, I think we're getting closing up slowly, is there anything you want to recommend to the university, to the next generation, you as a role model? Do you have this final statement you want to place, Dea or Claudia?
I think my statement would be that the people try always to be passionate about what you're doing and also never to lose the curiosity. So these are, for me, the two most important things if you want to stay in science: passion and curiosity.
Cannot agree more. And I want to say that for me, in this group leader position, what matters is two things. People I work with in my group, because they motivate me. Just seeing how curious they are, how much they want to know, how much they're trying to connect different things. This just is an incredible source of inspiration for me, and I couldn't do without this. And a level above is having support from the university. In my case, it's my department head, Professor Vida, who is incredibly supportive, and he always wants to know what we're doing. Wants to hear where we're up with our science, with all our recruitments and plans. And for me, it's very motivational, very inspiring as well, because I know he cares. So it's important for my people that they see that I care about them, and I do a lot. But it's also important for me to know that my superiors care about what we're doing. So I think it's important part of support that you show that you care about your people, that you don't just regard them as how much money they bring in and how many impact factors they collected over the years, but also that you're genuinely interested in what they're doing, in their science, and that you try to understand it and try to support them when it's hard, of course, but also when good things happen, to celebrate together. I think, it's an important part of research, which can be very hard, very trying at times. And it's important to have support when it's difficult, and also to be happy when good things happen.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to the times we can celebrate. More celebrations, we need more celebrations. But I take along the recommendations about communication, it's about speed, it's about support. The word of support came very often in various circumstances, I think that. And I would also agree to Claudia, it needs passion, it needs curiosity. And maybe I would like to add it also a little bit of patience. I mean, probably, you know, your patience with your next generation, patience with the institution, patience with research. So, but within this combination, I think we can all do a great job, and we all try to make this a place where talents can grow and we can attract talents. And so it was a real pleasure, Claudia, Dea, to talk to you and have this career talk with you at our day of our university. And so thank you all for listening and participating. So I have just one more small announcement. Please stay online. Florian Kramer is having this university lecture today at 3:30 p.m. He will discuss with Rector Müller the latest developments in the COVID vaccine and discuss with you also. You have the possibility to ask questions. So we are all looking forward to have you back at 3:30. Have a nice afternoon. It was a great pleasure. Thank you again, Claudia, Dea, for sharing your insights, your experience, and your recommendations. We will do our best. Thank you.